Okay, thanks for everybody coming. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Nagog Hill Orchard Work Group for May 5th, 2024. This should be a short meeting. We just have a couple agenda items here. I'm going to ask, since we're doing this remotely and none of us are Zoom experts, at least I'm not, we don't have the ability to mute and unmute people. So unless you're a work group member, we're going to have, if you have anything to say, we'll after each agenda item, I'll ask for input and we'll ask you to raise your hand. So I think because this is a Zoom meeting, we've got to do a roll call agenda. So I'll call the roll. Matthew Nordhaus.
Present.
Brad Mitchell, present. Karen Morrison. Present. Amy Tarla Lewis.
Present.
And nobody else is here. So let's just leave it.
No other board members.
No other board members here. We do have a quorum. So Karen, I'm going to turn this over to you since you did most of the discussions with the town administrator's office and council. But essentially at previous meetings, we have voted to recommend that we pursue a sale of the orchard. To do so, we need to go before town meeting. And we have a warrant article, draft warrant article. And it's actually a two-step process is how we do this. We will go to town meeting, get permission to go ahead and do this, hopefully. Come back, do an RFR. Hopefully we'll find a vendor, somebody who wants to purchase the orchard. Then we go back to town meeting, so the folks at town meeting will have an idea of who they will be selling it to and what their plans are. As a reminder, this sale does not mean it will come out of agriculture. It actually has to stay in agriculture, and that's the intention. But based on the weight of evidence, I think we had a unanimous vote by the work group to recommend a sale. So that's where we are today. So Karen, with that, unless Nord or Amy or you have anything else to add to it, let's get into the warrant article language. Vin, you have a question.
Yeah, real quick, just because I've gotten some questions from the emails that I send out, and I do appreciate you providing me with information about the meetings. Vin Solo, 3 Sarah Doublet Road. I just want to clarify that the two-step process means the town meeting in May and then the subsequent town meeting in November. Is that correct?
Yes, that's the intention of this work group.
Awesome.
Hopefully November. I mean, it could be that it goes longer, but the intent is to drag an RFP out, vet the vendors, come back with somebody who's hopefully successful, and then have those, and probably actually even do a presentation with that person and come back to the town meeting in the fall.
Okay, thank you. There was just some confusion. People were thinking that the approval is going to be happening in May, and I didn't think that was the case. I just wanted to clarify.
We have to essentially list it as surplus property in order to even... Karen, we can't hear you. Can you... Still can't hear you, Karen.
How about now?
Yep, that's good. Sorry.
Okay. So we are not, the way this article is drafted, we will not have to go back to town meeting after this article. After this article is hopefully approved at our forthcoming town meeting in May. That will give the select board the authorization to move forward with the sale once the RFR has been issued and we have found a suitable vendor.
Okay, so I was not at the last meeting, but what we had discussed previously was bringing that person back and allowing the individual sale to go to town meeting. What happened there?
It's not the way that it's not the way to do it. It's not the way they want to do it. So this is more streamlined. It prevents the concerns that were expressed, for example, about it's basically with the solicitation, you're offering it for sale. And if you get a bid that's acceptable, if the bid is acceptable, then you have an agreement to sell. Whether you don't need to go back to town meeting at that point with this article passed and it's in the history.
Okay, well, I apologize. That was not what was discussed at the last meeting I was at.
Correct.
Unfortunately, it wasn't at the last meeting. It seems to have changed. So, Vin, to answer your question, the May town meeting will then authorize the select board to go ahead and sell the property. Joanne Deary, can you announce yourself and your address, please?
Joanne Deary at Harwood Avenue. And I'm just wondering who decides what is a suitable offer? And what if there's more than one suitable offer? How does that decision get picked?
The working group, my assumption is that this working group would advise and give recommendations to the select board, and it is ultimately the select board's decision to make.
And that decision will get made in an open public meeting of the select board.
Correct. The RFP itself will set forth all the restriction or all the requirements. That's one of the reasons we're having the workshop, is to understand what is important to the town to have in that RFP. And it will set forth a way in which we'll be scoring, for lack of a better word, or setting forth what qualifications are required to have a bidder be acceptable.
So we are having an upcoming public meeting at which we're going to take a lot of public input that's going to be taken into account in the RFP.
Correct.
Any other questions? So I apologize for the confusion. Unfortunately, I was sick at the last meeting and missed the change. Okay, so I don't see any of the hands raised. So Karen, do you want to move forward with the warrant article language?
Sure. So the warrant article language is to see if the town will vote to authorize the select board to sell portions of property known as the Morrison Nagog Hill Orchard, more particularly described as the premises below, comprised of 55.34 plus or minus acres of land, more or less, 49 of which acres are subject to an existing agricultural preservation restriction, upon such terms and conditions as the select board may determine, and to authorize the select board to expand the existing agricultural preservation restriction as the select board may determine, and to authorize the select board to convey or acquire a historic preservation restriction on portions of the premises as the select board may determine, and to execute, deliver, and grant or acquire such deeds, restrictions, instruments, and agreements as it deems reasonable, appropriate, and in the best interests of the town to effectuate the transfer of title and the purposes of this article. And then it goes on to describe the premises and
No, it's not.
including the main barn, the orchard, and the dwelling, or to take any other actions related thereto.
So some of that language just as background, we do anticipate putting some additional restrictions on that. Right now, the house and the barn are not part of the APR. We have at least secondhand verbal agreement from Department of Ag Resources to include the barn and the associated property with the APR. I think, did we have a vote at the last meeting to put a historical restriction on the house?
I think we had a consent to move forward with it.
That's
Okay,
correct.
so we should discuss that. So there's discussion about putting a historical restriction on the house, and there's also been discussion. My understanding is that absent state law, we can put a 30-year restriction associating the house with the APR property, which is our goal. And I think that's something we're going to explore doing as well. Not to mention any other input we have at, there's a community meeting on Thursday, April 25th from 6 to 8 p.m. at the library. Again, that's Thursday, April 25th from 6 to 8 p.m. at the library. Are there any questions about what the warrant language does? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands up, so barring that, Vin?
Apologies, I had to unmute myself. There are two barns. Are there not one further down Nagog? And
Yeah, the lower barn, which is further down Nagog, is on conservation property, which is not part of the sale. We can't actually sell that. We can sell the APR. We can't sell the conservation restriction. So that's going to remain owned by the town. We have offered it up for lease to anybody, but we're not selling that one. The one that would be sold would be the upper barn that's across from the house, whatever that four corners is, but the main one where they used to have the fruit stand.
thank you.
Any other questions? So barring none, I'll entertain motions. Oh, Joanne, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Joanne Deary, Harwood Avenue. So if there's an additional historical restriction on the house, will that complicate the person trying to, renovate that house? Because I understand it needs like pretty significant work.
So my understanding again, and this is still under discussion and we haven't voted on it, is the historical restriction only governs the exterior of the house,
Okay.
largely to retain the aesthetic of the appearance from outside. So it wouldn't restrict them much for instance, from making it into a two-family or something, though there are some restrictions which we need to consider. And again, we haven't voted on this yet, but we are looking into it further.
Would it restrict the person from making it into like a 5,000 square foot palace, a much bigger house?
They wouldn't be able to put an addition on or add floors or anything like that, is my understanding.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move that we, this working group recommend the article as written and presented in the warrant for the town meeting in May.
Second,
Amy Tarr. Yep.
Okay, so I have a motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Roll call vote.
Roll call, Matthew.
Matthew is yes.
Brad, yes. Karen,
yes?
Amy.
Yes.
So we have a unanimous of those.
And Will is on now as well.
Oh, I'm sorry. Will, did you hear that? Will Pickard, you're muted if that's the right Will.
I'm on the call too. It's Jen Clancy.
Oh, hey, Jen.
Okay. Okay. So we going back to the roll call vote. We've had some additional members join. So Matthew,
Matthew is yes.
Brad, yes. Karen,
Yes?
Jen,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Will, if that's Will Pickard.
Might not be.
Okay, it might be another Will. So we've had a couple additional people join us. So of those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people present, we have a unanimous vote to recommend to the select board to move forward with this warrant article. Any other discussion? So again, please spread the word. We'll be getting it out as well on Thursday, April 25th from 6 to 8 p.m. We will be having a community meeting on this topic at the library. A good part of the focus will be to answer questions about the warrant article and what's coming up and what it means, but also to take input on what else we might put in the RFP when we put it forward. For instance, there was some discussion about perhaps putting a right of first refusal on the property. So if whoever does buy it ever goes to sell it, the town has the option to come in and purchase it. So please keep that in mind. The only other agenda item I have is largely for the board members. Do we need a meeting the coming Wednesday? We have one scheduled. I did a call for agenda items and didn't get much response. So I think we may be in a lull between, a lull between doing the RFR and the RFI and the RFP and getting out the warrant article. What's any discussion among work group members?
Karen sent around a few items. Talking about the clean out and inventory of the upper barn, discussing the presentation for town meeting for May 7th, and discussing the 425 meeting. I mean, the last two are, I guess we could put off until a week later, but we probably don't want to wait until the 24th to talk about the 25th.
Okay, and I'm gone the 17th. So why don't we plan on a meeting on a regular scheduled meeting on the 10th, and I'll put out the agenda item with those particular items.
Sounds good.
Brad,
Okay,
if we just circle back to the first agenda item real quick.
yeah.
There was a request from the select board that we include a map of the sale property. Matthew, do you want to speak to that? Or?
Yeah, I'm going to make that. I'm gonna do something similar to the map I made, the simplified map I made that shows the areas of APR, of conservation, the envelope of the barn and the house, and just the extent of the property. I need to probably connect with Sarah to make sure that I have it accurate. And I also want to make sure that the plot numbers that are referenced in the article match the plot numbers on the map that I'm going to create. So
Okay.
I'm going to complete that and try to get it. I'll confer with Sarah to make sure it's accurate. And with the board's permission, I'll just provide it to the town administrator on Monday, which is when the warrant goes to press.
That works. I would look at the appraisal We went through hell trying to figure out what was what because we have so
Okay.
many conflicting maps, and I'm pretty sure that's the most accurate. It's certainly the one we
Okay.
settled on.
Okay, thanks. That's good to know.
And also, I think Sarah's on travel. Is that right still?
No, she said she was available after, I think after 5 tonight.
Okay.
She's on a call right now.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I will contact her and I'll sort it out with her.
But again, I think the appraisal is probably your best sort because we went back and forth a half a dozen times to settle on.
Okay, that's great to know. Thank you.
Any other business? Barring none, I know we're supposed to do a roll call, but nobody's going to say they don't want to adjourn. So we're just going to say it. Any motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second,
I second.
have a good weekend. Thank you.
All right. Thank